Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. We're back with our sixth episode of Pick Up the Mic. It's been going really well, and we've had a wide range of talented speakers and spoken about, I guess an even wider range of important subjects. And today is no exception. Today we'll be talking about a very important subject to all of us, and that is the idea of sustainability and why it's important to be sustainable. But before we go into that, we've still got Sam and Anushka on the call as well. So Sam and Anushka, if you could say hi to everyone.
Hey everyone.
Hey guys, great to be back.
Welcome back to another episode. And we've got, as Jeffrey was saying, such an important point this week about sustainability, and that's new for the episode. So good luck everyone.
Thanks for that, Sam. Now I guess let's introduce our speaker for today. So I don't want to give you guys an overview about her, so I'll introduce her. So Yetunde, could you please introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Hi everyone, my name is Yetunde. I'm a student at Brunel University, and I study civil engineering. So sustainability is it's a really big topic in what I study, but also just like in everyday life. I'm just here to talk about that with these guys, and hopefully share some information, do a little bit of educating, take on board opinions. So I'm excited.
Thank you for that. And I think like we've all highlighted, for those who might not know, I think it's either September or October is when the COP26. So it's like a meeting of all these different countries to discuss climate projections. Obviously climate change is a big part of being sustainable and, the idea of sustainability. It's definitely very relevant. And even in this last year, leading up to it, we'll be seeing what each country, especially since we're hosting it as the UK, we'll be seeing what the UK will be doing regarding this thing. So got a great subject for you guys, a great speaker, and let's get into it.
Thanks for that introduction, Yetunde. So as Jeffrey said at the start, this episode of the podcast is all about sustainability. So could you give us a quick definition of, what sustainability is and tell us why it's important?
So sustainability is kind of all about meeting the needs of today without compromising the needs of tomorrow. So like the future. That's kind of what like the general kind of definition, if you ask anyone, if you Google it, that's kind of the definition that they give you. It's the one you get in school as well. So basically it's just about just like preserving the world for future generations. So obviously we have requirements now for, like to live, we have requirements for infrastructure, we have requirements for food, we just have requirements for life. But it's all about like, as well, like not depleting, the world that we live in now so that future generations struggle to also provide themselves with the things that they need to live. So it's kind of like about leaving, also like you'll hear as well, like leaving the world a better place than when you came in. So that's just about like, again, preserving like the world as it is now so that future generations can also experience the world as we experience it now. That's kind of like an overview in terms of like what sustainability is and its definition.
Great. Yeah, that's really, really well said. Thank you.
And I think for anyone, I guess one way you could sum up sustainability is in, the words of Michael Jackson with, I think it's the Earth song of, make the world a better place. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Yetunde. That is, again, it's so important. It's the future. It's every generation after us. We're just a minute speck in a period of time. And to affect things, obviously you can affect things on a greater scale. But we were wondering on the individual scale, what do you do that other people can pick up who are listening to the podcast? What do you personally do? What steps do you take to become more sustainable in your life?
So the main things I would say is if you actually look at like how you should be sustainable. So the first kind of thing that they say is that we should reuse everything that we have. So there's, I don't know if you guys know that there's a triangle of like how we should save resources, and the first thing is to reuse it. So I do try and reuse stuff where I can. So even something as small as like a water bottle. So instead of going out every day to get a new bottle, when I finish my bottle, I will refill it and then I'll keep that bottle for maybe like 2 weeks, and then I'll go out again and get a new bottle, and then I'll do that again for 2 weeks. Or I'll just buy like a reusable bottle, like the ones that are designed for you to keep for long periods of time. So like little things like that. I always recycle, so I always check anything that I use for the recycling little sign, and I always recycle wherever I can. That's really important, I think, in terms of being sustainable. Also, like just generally like looking at what companies do in terms of their sustainability policies, and that you don't really, I feel like people think you have to go out of your way to kind of know what companies do with their sustainability policies, but I don't think it's only 2 minutes. You don't need to go too far out of your way. Just know like what the company that you're buying your clothes from, or your food from, or your shoes from, like what their kind of sustainable policies are in terms of how they're caring to look after the environment. Like like a lot of companies like their supply chain, so like when you go to Tesco, you'll see your meat, like it will tell you if your meat has been sustainably produced, like just all these little things that like on your everyday life that don't take too much time. Those are the kind of things that I do, and then hopefully when I get into in my working world, then I could hopefully work with my company as well to make sure that they're more sustainable, like their supply chains more sustainable and stuff. But that's for the future. But kind of like what I do every day is just small things, to make sure that I'm trying to be as sustainable as possible.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, no, you made some really good points there. And one of the things that I picked up on was, saying like do some research on the company. Which I think people just don't do. And I'm in the habit of doing it anyway, because I like to look up to see if a company's got like a dodgy history in any way. Mm-hmm. And like, just looking up their environmental policy, what steps they're taking towards it. Are they a carbon neutral company? Are they on their way there? Are they putting the steps in there? Yeah. It's really important. And like where you put your money is essentially where the industry's, it's a knock-on effect. You might think, oh, this is only a couple of quid. But then at the end of the day, like that then moves into their sort of supply chain and informs their decisions, like what you spend money on.
Exactly. I definitely agree. It's just a little bit every day. Like it just makes such a difference. Like, you see facts and figures, like most of the waste that goes to landfill could be recycled or reused. It's just something as small as that. Like, okay, cool, I might throw away a water bottle, but if everyone on the planet throws away a water bottle, that's 7 billion water bottles. So it has such a knock-on effect. Like we could just, if even just half of those people didn't throw away the water bottle and reused it, that's just so much less waste. And that's really important when looking at sustainability.
Definitely. And like you were saying, like if they don't put it in the recycling as well, so you say you've got a recycling bottle, look out for the sticker, look out for the little circle or the little the recycled sign, or a triangle, depends which one it is, because like you were saying, like if it is recyclable and you just end up throwing it in landfill, that's just a waste, because then it will just that will never be recycled. That's just going to sit in the environment for like 1,000 years plus. But yeah, also like you were saying, like there was the reduce, reuse, recycle. That's the triangle you're talking about.
Yes, yeah. So it's like a hierarchy. So reuse is at the top, reduce is at the top. So use less of everything that you use. So avoid waste completely where you can. So if you don't create waste, then that's the best. Then it's reuse. So reuse everything that you can until it's at the very last stages of its life cycle. And then obviously recycle is like the kind of at the bottom before landfill. So yeah, those are the kind of 3 things I think everyone should just aim to do in general. It's just a little bit, a small bit every day.
Yeah, I've heard that in songs before. I can't remember which one, but yeah. I actually started using, for the reduce thing, I started using bars of shampoo and conditioner, literally just like a couple of weeks ago. And then it doesn't have any plastic in it. So like it's just got a bit of cardboard, you throw it away. And instead of like you said, you're not using the plastic anymore. It's just so much better for the environment, because that can just biodegrade.
Exactly. That's a really good. Yeah, even if you do buy stuff where like it has a little environmental impact, so like cardboard and glass, where they can actually be broken down and used again, or they will biodegrade into the environment. Obviously, in the case of cardboard and stuff, it's just like little things like that. For example, like also like refillables as well. Like a lot of people don't know, like if you buy you buy like some washing up liquid, you can actually get refillable like bottles sent to you, and they're also recyclable as well, instead of just buying a bottle every week. So yeah, it's just keeping informed and being educated.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, that's the future, isn't it? It's just like all of the rice, pasta, like soap, shampoo, conditioner. We're just going to go to a supermarket with our, with our like already designated, like it's going to be like glass bottles or whatever, and then we take it instead of taking it back in plastic. Like the future should be that we just go and we collect it in like our already used like permanent containers.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about in the future. Like even like Sainsbury's now, they don't have their fresh products in plastic bags anymore. You buy a reusable bag, and then you select your fruit and veg, you put it in that bag. It's like 30p, and then you bring that bag every time you come shopping to get your fresh products in the fruit and veg section. So it's just little things like that.
Wow, that's really good. I didn't know that. I think everyone should be doing that, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, Sainsbury's will start doing that.
Yeah, nice. Thanks.
Yeah, wow. I think both yourself and Sam have highlighted that, there's definite need for like education when it comes to tackling and implementing like sustainable practices in your life. Now, I guess taking it slightly away from sustainability, but I guess focusing on another aspect is this idea of representation. And I know in our previous episodes, we've been talking about why representation is important. And in the last episode, we talked about how representation within STEM is definitely like a huge thing. But I also know that, when it comes to things like encouraging people to get involved with like campaigns around sustainability or any topic in general, that there can sometimes be, I guess, some barriers when it comes to not only representation, but, how can you get a certain group to be more sustainable? So I guess one of the question that I want to ask you, Yetunde, is how can representation help encourage sustainability, whether this is I guess universities doing this, or whether it's like organizations or the government? Answer the question whichever way you'd like.
Okay. I actually wanted to start by saying this is it's a really hard topic, kind of how you encourage sustainability, because a lot of the time in the media, you get celebrities who really push sustainability, but it comes across very preachy. And quite hypocritical, because you get a lot of people, influencers, famous people saying, we need to save the planet, we need to change our lives. But then, they're wearing fur coats, they're flying on a private jet to get from A to B. Obviously, yes, they can afford to, but, because of, they're saying this and then doing something else, it does come across very preachy and hypocritical. I think that's why so many people really struggle to kind of embrace sustainability as something for the future, because they just have really poor like experience or knowledge of it when it comes across in that preach way in the media. So I think I think sustainability is such a big thing. It's not like it's for everyone. It's not just like to a specific group. And I think in terms of getting representation, well, first of all, it requires more than one person. To kind of to encourage sustainability. It requires a team of people. So, for example, within a community, you might have a leader in the community, but I feel like it needs more than just one person to kind of say, hey guys, look, we need to change the way that we address things. I think it's easier as well to kind of encourage sustainability if it's coming from a person that you can relate to. So if you've got one student saying to another student, hey, this is how so we're in the same situation. This is how I incorporate sustainability into my everyday life. If you have someone from the same ethnic group saying, hey, look, I know we do this in our culture, but also we can do this, and this is a little bit more sustainable. So I think it's really important to have people who you can relate to, guiding you and educating you and informing you about sustainability. It does trickle down from the top, obviously. It starts with the government and legislation, and it will trickle down from the top. I think it's really important to have people who you can relate to, trying to encourage you and show you sustainable practices. And also just like the businesses as well that you go to every day, like I mentioned before, like Sainsbury's making the switch to reusable bags, like that would encourage so many people who didn't incorporate that element of sustainability into their lives in terms of reusing a bag. And again, like with the with the bag charge came in a couple of years ago. So now they charge 5p or 10p or whatever for bags. Again, a lot of people would just come in the supermarket. I myself am victim of this. I'd come in, buy one thing, throw it in the bag, and then, take the bag and never use it again. But now, because I pay 5p for my bag, I'm more likely to just walk out with it in my hands, which saves that bag. So it's really important, I think, in terms of representation, to have it all around you and also have people who you can relate to, encouraging you to be more sustainable, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think, you raised like really good points there. So like this idea, I think the first point you raised about this idea of preachiness is definitely something that occurs when it comes to sustainability. And I had a discussion with someone who's a Brunel student as well. And they raised this idea of it's almost like, they said that it's basically like there's two extremes when it comes to not necessarily like just sustainability, but they were saying, because they were talking about climate change, but it still links in. And they were saying that there's this idea of you're either like all in or you're like not helping, which obviously is not the case. It shouldn't be that just because, I might recycle, but because I'm not vegan doesn't mean that I'm suddenly like, I don't believe climate change is real or I'm not doing enough to do it. Like being sustainable with some of the things that we choose is definitely it's definitely a lifestyle choice. And if you've got the means to be more sustainable, whether it's, using sustainable clothing, because I know certain sustainable clothing can be more expensive. I know also there's loads of different issues with that. So yeah, I think it's definitely true. This idea of preachiness shouldn't happen. And it should be this idea of, I'm not perfect. I won't be sustainable in everything in every area of my life, but I'm going to try as much as I can. Just do that. I think definitely, like you said, the idea of representation is another thing, because obviously different cultures will have different ways they, I guess, understand the word sustainability. So like I know for myself, so I'm Nigerian, and I know like one of the things that like even to this day still happens is I do get like some of my clothes are hand-me-downs from my brother and my dad. And that's just always been like something that I guess it's just always happened. And it's just one of those things where if my dad's got a stylish shirt, he's not using it anymore, and I ask him for it, he's just like, cool, have it. But yeah, it's one of the things that, other people might hear that and be like, oh my gosh, like hand-me-downs, that doesn't make sense. This idea of getting cultures, just like engaging with cultural practices. Like I know, I'm pretty sure we all know this one, because I know, especially when it comes to Nigerian parties, a lot of aunties and uncles do this. They bring like the like plastic containers with them, ready to keep some leftovers. Even like things like that. Like it is sustainable in the idea that they do use like any food being wasted in the culture is seen as like a bad thing. There's this idea of like using it to the full, basically. I feel like definitely when it comes to representation, especially for young people as well, because obviously like a young person, if they only see that it's done in their house, some young people might be like like it's not the norm, it's not something that people do, it's not something that fits in. Obviously it's clearly something that a lot of people do. So I think definitely this idea of like giving young people, I mean, we raised this in our last episode about role models, and using these like role models to help encourage and work with communities to ensure that they can be the most, I guess, sustainable that they can be. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you say. Like again, in cultures, like you get some cultures where they already undertake it wouldn't, sustainability, people think it's this big fancy stuff. It's something as small as everyone bring your own Tupperware. Like I've been to some weddings where they provided Tupperware, but that's very wasteful, because I know everyone has Tupperware in their house. We have so much Tupperware downstairs. Most of it doesn't get used. It will get probably recycled at the end of the year. But if everyone brings their own Tupperware, they're aware that, they're only they can they'll take what they want, as opposed to just being handed something that they don't necessarily want and then it gets thrown away. If I bring my Tupperware, I know I'm taking food home. And again, yeah, obviously having waste, especially food waste in our culture, it's very frowned upon. And, you know, my mum has taught me from young, always finish your food. Don't waste any food. We don't like to waste
Definitely.
food. So that's definitely, again, a cultural thing. Whereas I've been to some people's houses and, you know, food's getting thrown in a bin all the time. They don't really see it as that big of a deal. But why would you buy something if you're not going to eat it? You know, obviously you can't plan, you know, everything perfectly. But if you're buying, you notice every week you're throwing away the same amount of food, like just small changes like that. It's just really important.
Yeah. I think also, like, looking at it from a psychological point of view, it depends like how much like wealth the person's families come up from, if you get what I mean. Because like my mum, she grew up in like a small village in Spain, because they went out there through her childhood and her dad's childhood as well, and they basically didn't have any money. And so my mum now will literally, like, absolutely anything gets salvaged. So like whether it's like a jar she's used, whether it's like a Tupperware, whatever it is, she's like keeping it, and she's never going to get rid of it. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, do you want to throw this away? You've had it for like ages. She's like, no, I can still use it. And I think it depends, like that sort of, I guess sometimes it can come from a place where you didn't necessarily have the means to always get something new. That then you feel that, you know, that because of economic reasons, but now that there's less economic stresses in the world, it's about like reining that in, I guess.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like you do find that people who maybe have been from less fortunate backgrounds or less where the money hasn't necessarily, like income isn't as high as other backgrounds, they're more likely to kind of be more sustainable with their practices. But that's just out of their situation. So they unconsciously have that as they get older, and even if the income increases, they still have those unconscious tendencies. But for someone who maybe of a higher income, who's not had to worry about money, they kind of I don't want to generalize, obviously, but you can see how not having more money would mean that they don't have those same worries, and not having those same worries can lead to like just, you know, small things like wasting food or throwing away clothes, or like, for example.
Yeah, the same way, like what you were saying about how you pay like say 5p to buy a bag whenever you go to the shops, and then because you've paid that, you know, like, oh, I'll just take it back out with me when I go because it's better not to waste. Some people just say, oh, it's only 5p, or it's only £1, it's okay, and they just throw it away regardless. And that kind of links back to what, you know, you and Sam were just saying about it depends kind of on the economic status and the academic background that you're from, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, it plays a big part, definitely.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, so thanks for that, Itunde. That was a really actually interesting conversation that we were all having actually in the last question. And it also links into, I think, something that you were saying in one of the earlier questions of you can't just think about yourself or think, I'm not going to do this because someone else will do it. Everyone has to play their individual role in, you know, in sustainability. Like it's not just, you can't just think about only yourself in that situation. So yeah, that's very, very true, and, you know, really good conversation. So the next thing I want to ask you is, what word kind of, you know, describes your hopes for the construction industry?
So I couldn't really come up with one word. I've got many words.
Many words.
Yeah,
no, go for it.
I guess the key word would be prioritize. I guess if you have to shorten it down to one word, but like my thing would be prioritizing the environment. Because if you prioritize the environment, then sustainability kind of comes naturally with that. And I did a year in industry actually after my second year of study. So I worked for a construction company. And you hear about it in class as well, but until you really go out there and see it, like, you just don't know the scale of these kind of things that happen. And there are like policies and legislation out there to protect the environment, and, you know, for companies, you know, to reduce their waste, and they, you know, there's a lot of like stuff going on in terms of like reducing waste and trying to make construction more sustainable. But unfortunately, it is one of the biggest like polluting. It's one of the biggest polluting industries in the world. And I guess a big chunk of that comes from actually concrete production. So obviously we use concrete to build everything, like everything in the world, like almost I think it's the world's most used man-made material, and it's the world's second most used resource after water. So like you can imagine like how much of this stuff, you know, we're pumping out every day to build new things. But concrete, to get cement that is used in concrete is really, the process is really damaging to the environment, because it produces a lot of carbon dioxide, which is why I said prioritizing the environment is kind of where I would like to see the construction industry go, especially with obviously the UK now have their target of carbon neutral by 2050. But then at the same time, carbon neutral doesn't mean that we don't pollute to the environment. It just means that anything that we put out into the environment, we also take back in. So the levels of CO2 in the air are still the same, as opposed to we don't produce any more carbon dioxide and we are producing zero emissions. So yeah, I think prioritizing the environment is kind of my hope for the construction industry, because if they do that, all of these areas where, you know, they're producing waste or they're destroying the environment, they kind of all come under that umbrella. And then hopefully, like with the legislations and the current practices and more sustainable practices coming in, that potentially, you know, that hopefully the construction industry will be able to really kind of cut down that carbon footprint and be more sustainable.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I had been reading something that had said around almost 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide or something is produced just by the manufacturing of concrete. So yeah, it's really interesting that you said that. And then also I'd read somewhere that, what is it? I think it's around 35% of the worldwide energy use, and like 40% of CO2 emissions come from the concrete industry. I was going to say the construction industry. So yeah, you're so right. Just that's the industry to kind of to not target, but you know, to look at when it comes to making things more sustainable, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a hard one with the construction industry. I think they definitely kind of need to take, I think, a lead role in being more sustainable as well, because if they can do it, you know, it'll be a lot easier I think it set a good example for other industries following.
Especially because it's such a big industry, yeah.
But yeah.
For sure. Yeah, really good answer. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Yetunde. I was wondering, so you've made some really good points about how devastating, you know, the concrete industry can be. And so I was wondering, what would you, if you were to have your own construction company, what do you put in place? What would your company do to ensure that it's sustainable?
Isn't that a dream, being in charge of a construction company? I think one of the main things would definitely be looking at, obviously, like I've mentioned it before, obviously looking at waste, where our waste goes, how it's used, reducing the amount of waste that we produce. A lot of materials in the construction industry can be reused, not exactly in the same way, but they can be reused. There's also companies, like there are companies where you actually pay them and they sort out your waste and they take it to be recycled. Like if you've got lots of metal, it can be melted down and turned into use somewhere else. So I think a big thing is looking at waste, seeing ways we can minimize waste. Obviously, I did mention concrete being one of like the biggest polluters, and unfortunately, because it's such a crucial material in the construction industry, it's really kind of hard to not use it. But instead of not using it, it would be looking at alternative sources for cement. So like maybe like fly ash, or just like not looking at traditional cement, because obviously that's quite a big polluter of carbon dioxide emissions.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, what is it in cement that actually makes it so polluting?
I think it's the processes that they use to actually produce cement, because cement is like, so cement is the glue that binds the rock and concrete together. So it's like it's one of the most important things in concrete. Like without cement, you don't get concrete. So I think it's the processes that they use to actually extract cement from mines, because cement is mined on quite large scales. Like I've been to a cement mine, and it's on like a very, very large scale. So obviously mining in general is really bad for the environment, but I think it's the processes that are used in concrete specifically that produce all of those carbon emissions that like make it such a big polluter in construction.
Sorry, carry on with what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I was waste is definitely a big area. Also looking at the supply chain. So like from a main contracting side, you have all these small companies that will come in, subcontractors that will maybe fix the windows or they'll do the brickwork. So again, looking at their kind of sustainability policies, seeing how much waste they produce, where they get their materials from, just looking at kind of like not just like us, but also the people we work with, ensuring that everyone is trying to be as sustainable as possible. And something that's kind of picking up speed in the construction industry is off-site construction. So that's basically where elements of a project are actually constructed in a factory, and it uses a lot less waste. It's a lot cheaper as well, less manpower to do the kind of same job you would do on the project. So looking actually at off-site fabrication would be definitely something that is quite sustainable practice, and it's definitely something that if I was running a construction company, I'd be looking more towards as well.
Okay, yeah, thanks. That's some really good points. And like you were saying, it sort of brings in that 3-step process of reduce, reuse, recycle, but like within a larger scale is like the key to doing it. Yeah, I don't know if you heard about like these. I guess another way would be doing it, like looking at the reduce thing, is to find like more efficient ways to use concrete. So like maybe make it thinner in places that it doesn't have to be as thick. Reduce it that way, because I guess it's sort of like it's fairly cheap, so it can sort of be put everywhere. I'm guessing it's fairly cheap. It might not be, but yeah, that's some really good points.
Yeah, definitely. Like obviously with that, you get the kind of engineering side of it would be like, okay, well, we kind of go for a minimum thickness, but obviously you can't predict the future, so we'd rather be safer than sorry. So it's kind of like balancing that as well alongside the environmental requirements. I think that's why it's so difficult for the construction industry to do it.
It'd be worse in the long run if you had to keep replacing a house every like 50
exactly
years. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much for the conversation today, everyone. And especially Yetunde, thank you for being on the podcast. And I think we can all walk away with definitely some key messages on the importance of sustainability. As everyone knows, we're on to another MC for this month, or for this episode. And this one is a bit different. So it's not necessarily an organization, but more a target that's been set. So the MC for this month is the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. They also are known as the Global Goals, but these are basically adopted by all UN or United Nations member states in 2015. And it's seen as a universal call to action to end different, I guess, worldwide issues such as poverty, climate change, in promoting this idea of sustainability, ensuring that people can enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. So these targets can be implemented, like they're integrated into different countries' policies. So it's seen as the idea that each of the countries that signed and agreed that they wanted to, do these things, their policies should be reflecting these targets. So as I said, some of these targets, there's 17 in total, but the 17 have they're the goal names essentially. So there's one like no poverty is the first one, zero hunger is the second, good health and well-being is the third, climate action is the 13th, affordable and clean energy is the 7th. But yeah, if you go onto the UN's website and type in Sustainable Development Goals, you'll find all 17 on there. And essentially, these goals are supposed to help countries, address these different issues by 2030. So now we know that 2030 is 9 years away. So it'll be interesting to see in the next 9 years, I guess, how countries go about to do these things, because they will be these will be very relevant and important things. We've seen how COVID's been being dealt with differently in different countries because of the amount of resources they've had. So obviously when it comes to reaching some of these targets, some countries may be struggling more than others. But yeah, this is, we feel like this is really relevant to the topic that we're discussing today. And that's why we've picked them as our MC today. But I'll just check, Yetunde, if you've got anything you want to say about the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, I think that they were a good idea when they were initially started. Some of them obviously very ambitious, like no poverty by the end of 2030. But also some of the goals actually had targets for 2020, which was last year. I'm not aware if they've been extended, the deadlines, the ones that didn't meet the targets or the ones that have had the targets. I think they're really good in practice, but I don't think that enough implementation of the goals has actually happened in legislation across all of the countries to actually meet the targets. And so I don't think most of them will be hit by 2030, which is unfortunate. But again, it's a nice idea. And I think it required a lot more work, I think, than they were willing to admit. And it wasn't going to be plain sailing, smooth sailing to the goals being met in 2030. So it'd be really unfortunate, obviously, for them not to be hit. But again, it was a nice idea.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I think, like you said, it'd be great if they can meet, even if it's not all of them. Some of these targets, definitely it'll be great if they can meet some. And like you said, obviously COVID wasn't in the plan. It went in 2015 when they signed it, and obviously they didn't see that this would be how 2020 and 2021 would be going. But yeah, it'll be nice to see how many of these targets could be met in the next 9 years. But yeah, we've now come to the end of the episode, and I just want to say a huge thanks to Yetunde for being on the podcast today. Like I said before, you've done an amazing job, giving huge insights to these topics. So thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me.
No, we're happy to have you. And to all our listeners, thank you again for listening to another episode. If you haven't already, please do check out the website to learn more about Yetunde and the other episodes that we're doing. And yeah, we'll be getting some information out on the website as well regarding some future projects as well. So keep an eye out for that. And if you want to learn more about our other MCs, they're also on the website as well under a certain section. So keep an eye out for that as well. And yeah, I wish you all the best in whatever you're doing today or wherever you are. And we will speak to you all soon. So take care, everyone, and thank you again.